Hello and welcome to the Pals Anime Lounge, a podcast where a bunch of pals get together to talk about anime. I'm your host Ace, and joining me are Artura
Hello, everyone.
and Gorzagorz.
Hi.
In today's episode, we're talking about Tekken the Motion Picture, which released in 1998. I chose this one because, well, I didn't actually have a specific reason, I just chose this at random. It was animated by Studio Dean, the studio behind Ranma Half, You're Under Arrest, and more recently, Konosuba, God's Blessing on This Wonderful World. Tekken the Motion Picture has a MyAnime List score of 5.26, making it the lowest score from anything we've covered on this podcast. Previously, DCTM Toramora was the lowest with 5.56 at time of recording. It's actually gone up since then, so it must have gotten better. The story for Tekken the Motion Picture follows Jun Kazama as she enters the King of the Iron Fist tournament to find out why the bones of a cloned dinosaur were pulled up by a fishing boat. To start things off, what's everyone's experience with Tekken?
Completely no idea. I barely even know what Tekken is.
And Goz?
I first saw Tekken when I was quite young. My cousin had it on PlayStation, or had Tekken 2 actually. And later he had Tekken 3, so I played both of those. I would later go back to see what the first game was. And I didn't really have much interest in the recent ones, but I know that it's probably the most mainstream fighting game at the moment. And if you do research, you'll probably find out that it's has pretty high active player base.
That's actually surprising to me. I thought you were a fighting game fan. I thought you'd have played more of them.
No, I'm pretty casual in terms of fighting games.
Okay. Myself, first Tekken game I played was a demo for Tekken 3. It wasn't on my PlayStation, it was on my mate's, and I was just winding him up because I was Eddie Gordo, the break dancer,
Capoeira.
and he can be a bit spammy, and I just kept winning because I wasn't a fighting game fan, so I didn't do lots of different combos. I was just mashing the buttons, and Eddie Gordo just does combos.
Yet, to be honest, it is kind of like that with Eddie.
And I also played Tekken 2 and a little bit of the first Tekken. I don't really remember much about it. But again, these were... I played on my mate's console. I played the demo a few more times on my home console for Tekken 3, but I never really explored the franchise or went back to the later games. So actually, since this movie is based on the first two games, it was kind of more... I was more familiar with it than if we'd done one of the other Tekken things.
Mm.
That's not to say it's a one-to-one copy of the games, but we'll address how good of an adaptation it was after we've talked about the actual movie. Who wants to go first with their notes?
If I go first, we'll probably finish it before. It's too much. What about you, Gorse? You said you had quite a few?
I need to remember what they all meant.
We start with Jun remembering, having a dream about something that happened when she was a kid. Something we'll see again and again and again.
And again.
She opens her drawer, and there's like three things in this drawer, including this pendant that she took from Jin when they were both kids. And I just thought, I wish my drawers were so empty.
I assume that wasn't her place. It was a hotel, maybe. I don't know.
She just takes that pendant around with her.
To be fair, she's. I mean, it's pretty well established that she's mildly psychic, so she might feel like a connection to it, and of course because of what happened in the flashback. So yeah, she just takes the pendant.
I was honestly, I liked it, the story at the beginning. I'm quite a fan of the stories, the characters, and all that. However, there was a lot of problems. Like, for instance, a little bit after the beginning, at around like the 4 minute mark, maybe, they show the bones that you were talking about. And despite the fact that they're really old and they're desiccated and they're not like on a wall, they're all just magically together. And there's even a foot way through one of the nets. And it just somehow fits inside, even though the foot is like 5 times as big as one of the holes in the net. I found that really funny.
I honestly missed that completely.
It's just that we were shocked when my wife and I were watching, and the bones, despite them talking about being like desiccated and all that, the bones are just pasted together. It's something silly to complain about, but it's something I noticed.
Well, the bones turn out to be a genetic experiment or clone or something. So Jun is sent to the King of the Iron Fist tournament to find out more and find out why Heihachi Mishima is cloning things, even though, as you know, 8 years ago it was made illegal.
Yeah, that's one of my notes, as you know, because that's like the classic way to deliver exposition, to like tell the audience what the characters know, because the characters know that, but the audience doesn't know it. So you say, as you know, this, and that.
Well, as you know, this is a podcast where we talk about anime.
As you know, this podcast is on GameGrin.com.
Oh, one of my notes that I made early on was that there's just so much focus on Jun's eyes in the movie. It's like always a really tight focus on her eyes.
I didn't notice that.
It happens so often. It's not like it focuses on everyone's eyes. It's just hers.
One thing I was impressed with was actually the voice acting in English. I honestly, like, sure, there are some problems, but in comparison to some of the voice acting, like for instance in Animal Crossing's movie, I was quite impressed with the way they did it. And the animation looks very much like a budget Dragon Ball.
I also like the voice acting. I switched between the sub and the dub a couple times to check out both versions, and I didn't really like the Japanese versions.
Yeah, I was quite shocked that the English was actually decent.
I tried. I mean, like Ace, I switched to Japanese a few times to like, mainly because I noticed that the soundtrack is like English punk rock, and I wanted to see if in the Japanese version they also had that, and they didn't. It was just mostly quiet or like
Yeah,
had some ambience, and that's all. But
yeah.
my main problem with watching it in Japanese is that the subtitles were basically subtitles for the English dub, so they didn't quite match for me. One of the things in the dub is they they talk about Tekken, like not they use that word Tekken several times, and they don't explain what it means. It means Iron Fist, but yeah, they use Tekken every time, and in like the opening monologue, whatever,
Yeah.
say something about Tekken this, Tekken that, Tekken.
The dub explains what Tekken is. It's your fighting soul. It's your power. It's your Tekken. Your Tekken.
Yeah. Yeah, I was honestly, it's another note I made was that 10 minutes in, I was still completely lost as to what the point of the movie was. Since I don't know anything about Tekken, I was like, okay, I know they're going to go and fight, but why? How? And I don't know, it felt like a lot of things were unexplained throughout the first beginning of the movie. Afterwards, I started actually piecing everything together. But for a 57-minute movie, I was quite shocked at how lost I was 10 minutes in. It's just not very beginner friendly.
Well, just going back to the music a second, as you say, goes the Japanese version. The music was either not there in certain scenes, or it was the end credits, it was just very subdued instrumental. There's a scene early on where one of the antagonists is driving in a car with Nina, and this rock music is playing, and in the Japanese version, it's just no music at all. And the end credits, in as I say, is very subdued and instrumental, and in the dub, it's The Offspring.
Mm-hmm.
Just literally a track from The Offspring. I mean, I don't know music, but even I recognized it.
I I just I don't know. I kind of liked the music in the English version. Not like specifically the genre, but I guess it was the songs were okay. I didn't listen to them on their own, but they felt kind of fitting because it's like the whole concept of fighting games is, or early fighting games in specifically is kind of schlocky. Like those people fight for some reasons they have, and like in very early fighting games, you would the most you would learn about characters was from your game manual, and there was honestly some stupid information written there, like Kazuya likes collecting sneakers. So it's, and also like the way those, I don't know, maybe Tekken specifically looked like pretty crappy. Like the pre-rendered cutscenes, faces looked awful. If you look at the model of martial law in Tekken 1, it's the faces. The in-game model is horrifying. Kind of had the same feel to me because the games were kind of trashy in the first place. So you add kind of a generic punk rock music to like fight scenes and whatnot.
Honestly, despite the fact that the music changed, I was actually quite a fan of the dub versions. It feels like it fits the theme of the movie.
I did enjoy the dub. I watched most of it in the dub. I did have issues with the dub. Like, here is a line that Jun says to Kazuya. This is exactly what she says. Why are you so upset? Is it because your father threw you off that cliff?
I was rewatching this
I
today,
know.
and when this happened, that was hilarious. Yes, my father threw me off the cliff. I'm fucking pissed. What do you? What would you do?
That is why I'm so upset.
I was shocked because she kept being really annoying about that. She was like, "But why are you so? How have you grown so cold?" I'm not sure if I wrote a note about this, but she was like, "You were so sweet when you were young, and you're now so cold. How could you become that?" It's like, well, he was thrown off a cliff. What do you? How else would you react to that?
Yeah, the flashback that we mentioned earlier is Jun and Kazuya as kids. And Kazuya is saying, "Oh, why are you crying? Please stop crying." He says, "Please stop crying" about 14 times. It's because this bobcat killed a bunny rabbit. And he goes, "I'll beat up that bobcat because I'm going to be the best fighter ever." Then he actually picks him up and lobs him off a cliff.
It's a bit random.
Lions throw their cubs off of a cliff and only raise the ones that climb back up, so I'm going to do the same to you. Yeah.
To be fair, like that also kind of happens in the games, but it's
Yes.
I know it's not really shown in the game. Like you have to read the backstory in your manual again. I don't remember if it was at all mentioned in the game. And yeah, basically you don't see how it happened, but yeah, Heihachi he's set up to be the villain, and like I guess that's like his extreme. In the game, in the manual, it's implied that he's just like, if I'm gonna have an heir, like he has to survive this trial, whatever. And here it's like, oh, Dad, I'm hanging out with my friends talking about killing raccoons. Don't throw me off the cliff right now. Can you do it later?
When they meet later, they're both grown up. He doesn't recognize her, but she recognizes him because of his eyebrows.
I noticed that too. It's just there's so much wrong with the way she reacts to Kazuya. Like, for instance, one of the things she says was, "Your hatred for your father has been corrupting you." And the thing is, she didn't even know him much before that or after that. Like, she only got to meet him like for 1 second, and then afterwards, he just goes on a murderous rampage, understandably. But then she just keeps being like, "Oh, but you were so sweet and so kind." I don't know. I had so much of a problem with the main character. What's her name? Sorry, I never got to catch it.
It's Jun.
Jin. Yeah, she was horrible. I hated her. And that's not,
Yeah.
honestly. And everyone else was also. I mean, I understand the thing is old, and I'm not complaining about this. More about an observation how sexist everyone is. Every time a
Yeah.
female character pops up, the first descriptor is used as beautiful, or they'll say things like, "I don't know how you expect to survive this tournament." And it's like, okay, can you stop being mean, please?
Oh, I thought it was just Lei, who's, fun fact, he wasn't in the original game, I think. He was in the second one first, and he's based on Jackie Chan.
Oh, wow. Interesting fact.
Isn't Jack 2 also from the second game?
Well, Jack was in the first one too.
I thought he was a robot and then he had skin, or was it he had skin and then he was a robot? I just remember there was also a gun Jack.
That was in the third one, after Jack gets killed in his ending in Tekken 2.
Just like in Tekken the motion picture.
Yeah.
Kind of gruesome. In fact, there were a few gruesome scenes and one really unexpected gratuitous nudity. Like,
Oh my god, yeah, that caught me off guard.
woman turns around and, yep, there's boobs.
It wasn't an unwelcome surprise.
It's kind of emblematic of OVAs from that time, because, like, when you make anime for TV, like, it's specifically rated for, like, there's no nudity normally, or it's consistent throughout the thing. And with OVAs, you just suddenly someone's head gets ripped off and there's blood everywhere, and you didn't expect that because you're watching an anime cartoon.
And yeah, to that point, it had very tame fights. The fight sequences are kind of boring.
Oh my god, yeah, the one hit KOs always. It was just horrible. Everyone kept getting one hit KO. There was no actual fighting, no nothing. They just, like, for instance, in this fight where the big mannequin guy, I don't know his name, I'm so sorry. I don't know anyone's name. He fights when he's gonna enter the ship, and he gets punched in the stomach, and he just punches the black guy and throws him off into the water, and that's it. End the fight. And I think that's how most of the fights went in the entire movie, and it was horrible.
Well, there is that one almost fight where Michelle, the Native American, throws a tomahawk at Hihachi and he catches it in his teeth and
With his
bites it.
teeth. Yeah. It was horrible.
That again, like, I agree that it's hilarious, but again, it's in the general, if it's the general theme of the thing, that it's kind of trashy and, like, it's not
Ridiculous.
it's the story is serious in general, but the execution is, like, it's over the top. In general, in fighting games, the fighters are ridiculously strong, not just, like, competent martial artists, but, like, they punch you and you fly in the air, like, that's not realistic. So, like, I was okay with the Heihachi, who has wing hair, by the way, catching a tomahawk in his teeth and crushing it. Because, to be fair, in the games they could probably do that, all of them.
Well, my notes go, Hihachi bit through a tomahawk in capitals, followed by, also in capitals, invisible raptors.
That wasn't in the games, as far as
Yeah, it actually is. There's this character, Alex, in Tekken 2. I don't think he turns invisible, but he's a alternate skin for the kangaroo Roger.
Yeah, I know about Alex, but, like, those raptors like didn't. They're like a reference to Alex, but
Yeah.
they don't really look or behave like him. And again, they turn invisible. Like, was there predator vision in this? Am I making that up?
I don't think that was.
That's the feeling that the raptors gave me. Like they made predators from the movie Predator.
No, we saw like a shimmering outline of them a couple of times, and then the really gory attacks started, and Kazuya just rips one's mouth apart, quite over the top. I have the same question I had with Animal Crossing. How do you think they decided which characters to bring into this movie, which ones to highlight? Because we saw some of them, like King and Yoshimitsu, like cameos, but they didn't have any speaking lines. We didn't see them fighting.
Yeah, first off, since you mentioned the other fighters, King looked fucking cute, like he's from a cartoon. Like,
Chibi King.
I mean, his body was mostly right, but his face was like he's from a Looney Tunes cartoon or Tom and Jerry or something. Like he's that one side character in a Tom and Jerry episode. That's how his face looked like. Like he was so happy to be there.
Maybe that's why they didn't focus on him, because they knew they couldn't animate him properly.
That's why God knows what they would have done with the other ones that they left out then.
I mean, in the games, even in the new ones, it's obvious that that it's a mask. Like it never moves, his mouth never moves. It's obvious that he's wearing a mask that looks like a jaguar face, head, whatever. And he makes roar sounds because I don't know. He doesn't speak. He roars. But about like which characters they focused on, it felt appropriate to have like Jun, Kazuya, Heihachi be the focus, with Lei doing his cop stuff in the background. Yeah, that also felt appropriate. But yeah, the story was quite different from what it is. The Kazuya Jun Heihachi story was very different from what it is in the game. Basically, how after Heihachi throws Kazuya off the cliff, Kazuya climbs back. He doesn't make deal with the devil in the games. That's explained differently why he has devil powers, but whatever. So he climbs back up and Heihachi raises him. But Kazuya just keeps resenting him till he's an adult and he wants his revenge. That's the story. And because Kazuya was raised by Heihachi, he's basically as evil as Heihachi. So it initially seems like Kazuya is the hero and he's gonna beat this bad guy, but basically he beats him, he throws Heihachi off the cliff as he did to him, and basically takes over the corporation as is the new bad guy. That's the story of Tekken 1.
And then they started bringing in the demon DNA or something. I've only caught glimpses of the overall Tekken plot over the years.
I was honestly quite a fan of the plot of the movie. And several of the characters had interesting stories. It just felt like everything was executed rather poorly.
Yeah, Lee, the adopted brother of Kazuya and adopted son of Heihachi, decides, oh, if my brother is not going to die because of these raptor things that I cloned, then nobody will rule Mishima Industries, because I'm going to blow up the entire island and not try to escape. Like, he sets the self-destruct and then just stays there. He's got like 5 minutes. He could have gone to a helicopter or a boat or just... Nope, I'm just going to be angry in the control room while the island blows up.
While everyone else escapes. Like, the best move would have been to just go and fight Kazuya to keep him there. Honestly, one of the things I wanted to point out was one of the lines from the adoptive brother, where he says, "As long as my brother's alive, I'm the adoptive one with second-rate clout." I was like, wow, choice wording.
After watching it, I got curious and I looked on YouTube to see if anyone had abridged this, and they have, fairly recently, as it turns out. but they didn't get anyone to do any of the voices. It's all text to voice things like the Microsoft Voice and I don't know all of them. And the adopted brother is just a Japanese voice saying "excellent" and subtitles saying what you're supposed to say.
So I guess we found the next thing we're gonna watch, huh?
The abridged movie left in that line. Why are you so upset? Is it because your father threw you off that cliff?
It's just that without that line, the movie's just not the same.
And the abridged does change what happens because he just looks at her and doesn't reply. It's like, yes.
The actual answer he should have had.
I think it would be a good series to like get abridged by professionals, I guess, like Team 4-Star who have been doing it and know how to do it. Because like the animation is, I want to say that the animation is really good. Like fighting animation, everything looks impactful as it should. Face animation, all the movement. I don't think there were any frames that stuck out to me like they could be done better. And there's appropriate use of CG in some places, like the cyborg's Jack's arm is shown at one point when he punches the other robot. Yeah, there's a quick flash. I think that was a 3D model. Yeah, and there's some layering effects, like effects on water or effects on metal. Yeah, that was really good. So yeah, I think someone should take that and make an abridged series that was even more entertaining. Because it's a shame that this movie is not that known. Because it looks good. It seems to have real animation talent in it.
Yeah.
Just the plot and dialogue is hokey.
Okay, well, was it a good adaptation, do you all think? Personally, not really. There wasn't much fighting, and the fighting that was there was boring.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think the way like for a fighting game, it was adapted very poorly. Like I've seen, yeah, that's just horrible. It should have been more focused around action and more interesting action rather than a one-hit KO scenario for around 90% of the fights.
And goes?
I think as an adaptation of Tekken, it would be half and half for me. Like like trying to make sense of the way a fighting game happens with like you basically in a game you pick a character and you fight. You go through 7 fights in a row with no dialogue or anything in between, and then you fight the boss and you get a little cinematic ending to like make you confused, make you guess what the character that you played as deal was. And yeah, like the film tried to make sense why you would have fights in a row, like with the tower thing, like they strand people in the jungle and they have to get to the tower and they have to fight each other as they meet each other. So I like that. And there was some small specific events that paralleled some stuff that you see in a fighting game. For example, when the Native American Chinese woman fights Kazuya, the first scene you get with them, he basically beats her, but she gets back up and they start fighting again, kinda. So that parallels how you have the continues in fighting games where you basically lose the round and you see your character laying on the ground and you have 10 seconds to hit a button to go at it again. So that's, I mean, I'm kind of grasping at straws, but like I saw parallels like that. And I don't know, I feel like it represents fighting game genre or later fighting games in general a bit better because you have people with different ideologies just end up fighting each other because they're so into their own heads. They don't want to listen to anyone else, and like you need to beat them up so that they listen. So that's that's I don't know if I made any sense here because I always ramble and I don't make any sense, but
No, I
Here's what
completely
this was.
understood what you're saying.
Okay, well, we'll finish things off with what's your rating? Is it a thumbs up, a thumbs down, or a meh? Artura.
Oh my gosh, this is really hard. I'm like bordering between meh and thumbs down, so I'm just gonna go with thumbs down.
Okay. Goz.
I think thumbs up because just I don't know I didn't feel bored throughout the thing, and yeah, it watches itself. It watched itself for me. Like I didn't need to try and focus too hard to like get what's happening and like be engaged. But yeah, watch it once, and I don't know. I guess that will be enough, unless you're really into animation and like you study animation. There's some really good scenes, good frames in there.
Okay, myself, it's a meh.
Oh, that's so perfect.
So we've got one of everything.
Wraps it up in a little bow.
Yeah, it wasn't bad, so which is why I didn't get a thumbs down from me. But it also wasn't for me. It wasn't particularly good. It was just something that I watched, and I got to enjoy some funny moving pictures for a bit,
Mm.
With really questionable dialogue.
and some boobs.
That's the most important thing. That's exactly why it's a meh.
Actually, about the dialogue, I think in the first scene that we see Lee, the adoptive brother, he says business instead of business. I'm pretty
Well-
sure he says business.
Well, we're on the topic of mispronouncing things. One of the characters, I think it was Jun, said Gerija was actually as gorilla, and I was like, no.
You just turn to her. No, that's a gorilla.
This is horrible.
All right. Well, thanks for joining me for this podcast, guys, and thank you for listening to the Pals Anime Lounge. And better yet, thank you for subscribing wherever you found this episode. You can find more from us on GameGrin.com, finding us on social media, or listening to the Grincast podcast. And until next time, game on.